Next, we have Bridging the Gap, one of my favorite stories just because I struggle with this a lot. So, welcome, please, Brian Goodrich from PennyMac, our first Vice President of Enterprise. Thank you, Brian. Welcome. Best of luck.
Velocity. I am an avid runner. I have been running for approximately the last 30 years of my life, running a lot of races, and it's a pretty common thing. I have it. I get the shakes before every race. So right now I'm backstage, the adrenaline's up, got the shakes, kind of like a racehorse in the stalls, ready to go. And over the last 7 years, I've been doing a lot of obstacle course racing, Tough Mudder, Spartan, Deca, stuff like that. And so right now, my instincts are very confused that I am not jumping over a wall, running through mud, climbing a rope, or flipping a tire. We'll see what we can do about that. Hey, Phil, do we have a tire back there anywhere? A giant tractor tire. No? First of all, let's give it up for the Digital Velocity support staff that have been running this whole show. They have done a fantastic job, haven't they? Thank you. And so, yeah, working for PennyMac, I've been doing this in the mortgage business for about the last 2 years, and part of that, I've now transitioned over into the MarTech side of the business. I'm relatively new to this side. Most of my experience has been working in the government space, in the medical analytics space, cybersecurity after that, and then coming into the financial tech. So this is a relatively new journey for me, and that's who I'm largely talking to today. So who is PennyMac? We are one of the top 2 lenders in the United States. We have 2.4 million loans and 4.8 million customers. These volume numbers may look a little low to some of the volume that you guys deal with, but please keep in mind, each one of those loans is 6 to 7 digits behind each one of those. So there's big numbers backing those. The multiplication coefficient on that is not small. And I am here today to address people who are just coming through the process like I am. Could I get a show of hands of who is just getting started or considers themselves relatively early in their CDP journey? It's okay. It's okay. We're all here together. It's a journey we're taking together. Thank you. And of those, I'm curious about my marketing demographic, my audience demographic I'm talking to here. Where are my engineers in the room? Okay. Okay, and where are my executives, marketers, and product team? All right. So it's these 2 demographics that I'm hoping to bridge today. So we've been here at Digital Velocity. Who's got a neat idea that they'd like to take home and implement? I know I've got a feathered friend flying around in here with me. We'll try not to get too distracted by that. New ideas? Okay. A little quiet. That's okay. I don't need to dive into this too much. I was going to ask for volunteers, but this presentation was originally built for like 45 minutes, and I've only got 30. So we'll keep going. I want you to be able to take those ideas home and turn them into an engineered reality. But first, before we dive into that, we're going to do a little bit of story time. Or the struggles, and I want to talk to about some of the challenges we had trying to get our project off the ground. I believe that was Sab was referring to when he first came on stage and introduced me. So things started well. We went and worked with Telium. We identified our top use cases. We set up a regular check-in cadence with our Telium support team. We identified our personnel and our timeline, and then we went into internal design sessions. And this is where things got a little rough. We're trying to communicate these ideas back and forth. So I'm going to give you a visual idea of what our design sessions kind of turned into. I have noticed during the course of the conference, people have been taking pictures of architecture slides. This is not the slide to take a picture of. We will get to that later. I'll let you know when, but this is where things kind of went wrong. So we had a web experience and a database. We were going to pump that in through Telium, and we're going to send an email out the other side through Salesforce Marketing Cloud. No big deal. And then there was another database, and we wanted to add Google Ads, and the web interactions were going to come in through Google Tag Manager. And then we were going to, wait, I can't use that first database. That's locked out by what we can now consider best practices. And there's a different database that I need to take through and match it up with our master data elements of who the identity is of our customers, but that's not well attached to our visitor IDs for the web experience. And instead of going through that database, we're going to hook it up for SFTP site. I'm going too fast. That's on purpose. There's an enormous amount of complexity I'm skipping over here. But it just kind of turned into a mess of phone calls in and out. Oh, we want to do text messaging. There's LiveRamp involved. And then we got to identify which engineering teams are covered for this, which verticals, how's our end-to-end testing strategy going to work, what's the deployment strategy for this, our competing priorities, I got a web app in there, where's this all getting warehoused, what are my event limits, and how do I, oh, there's now more engineering teams involved, and now it's about time for a timeout. And this is kind of where we evolved into, and we had to pull back from what we were doing, and we were kind of caught in this cycle that I think is actually fairly common in trying to I said no slides. No pictures, not yet, we'll get there. We'll get to the good stuff later, but this was kind of where we lived, and so we had to stop, call a timeout, revisit where we were, and kind of go back to our basics on best practices and communication between marketing and engineering and trying to build out what it was we were going to do here. So this is what we're going to go through today. We're going to talk about these principles, and then we're going to get to the end. Hopefully we'll see how much time we have to step through what we built using almost strictly AWS tooling and how we're using that to interact with Telium, and how to do this, what we think is working out pretty well for us. So we're going to talk about vision, how to do an elevator pitch, how to have big ideas and small targets and maintain a common language. So first we're going to start off with vision, but this is a little different than a lot of the project vision that we normally talk about in our industry. And this is more on how am I going to start this conversation with engineering? How am I going to build a vision that I'm going to sell to them? And I put together a framework. Feel free to use it, but if you have something about like this, it should help you set up what you're actually going to try to express to engineering, because they're driven by very different motivators than your executive team is. So what problem am I actually trying to solve? And this is not what's wrong with my balance sheet or my pipe funnel, but like what am I actually trying to do here in the material world? What am I trying to build? Like what does this actually do in discrete terms? Not the bottom of my sales funnel is too tight or the top of it's too tight and I need to widen both these things, but more what action is a customer going to take and what's that going to do on the other end? This is a unique point that I've heard mentioned in my conversations several times at this conference. When you initially bring Telium, or really any third-party tool, to your engineering teams, there is an initial reaction by most every engineering team I've made, say, we can build that. So this is your opportunity to take Telium's rather unique sales proposition, take their slide deck, and try to pick out the aspects of it that are going to appeal to your engineering team and show them where this provides a unique value. Show them what they're not going to need to do as a result of bringing Telium in-house, as a result of bringing in these integrations. Show them what's going to take off their plate so they can focus on their core value propositions. And then how do I know if I won or if I lost? Define that before you even open the conversation with engineering of what's this going to look like at the end, and how can I let them know if they have succeeded or not succeeded yet at the idea for a project, for the vision that you had in the first place. Once you get to this point, you are ready to start your elevator pitch. Now, I am not going to try to describe to this crowd how to do an elevator pitch to an executive team. That's where we normally reference this thing, is I'm pitching an idea to a venture capitalist or my executive team. I need to pitch something upwards. This is going the other direction. I want to talk to you a little bit about how to pitch an idea downwards, down to your engineering team, and all the way down to the bottom level. You can get down to your individual contributors, you're going to see amazing things happen. So we got to get down to engineering, because fortunately elevators travel in two directions, but we're not there yet. Nope, keep going. There they are. And that's where they live. Don't worry about them, they like it down there. Once in a while, one of them escapes and gets a hold of a microphone. Our motivators are different, as I was referencing before. We have different keywords. I don't care about EBITDA. I barely know what it means. I don't really know much about your balance sheet or your sales funnel or your conversion rates, your cohort or your conversion projections. My keywords and things that tickle my frontal lobe are a little bit different. Talk to me about where I'm going to be solving problems, where things are going to be more efficient, where I'm going to make impact. I love that one. Talk to me about best practices. That Telium is a best practice in our industry of how to handle a customer data platform. Show me where this is going to be maintainable. Show me where there are going to be things that can be, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-maintained, can be self-driven by the marketing team. I have to get through this. I'm looking at you, Rebecca. Hi. Everybody say hi, Rebecca. But yeah, these are the things that get my attention. These are the ways that you can pitch this to your engineering team and get their engagement, because they got a million other things they're thinking about in their day. They're worried that the Python upgrade is coming up due. They're worried that they got to get their recovery plan ready. Are they covered from cybersecurity aspects? We've seen enough of those breaches in recent days. So that's what they got a million things thinking about. But so first thing you got to do is get their attention. Build your vision, make your pitch. Now you've got their attention, and now we can start moving forward. The only inaccurate thing about this slide is if this was really down where engineering was living, it'd be running in dark mode. So next up, we're going to talk about big ideas and small targets. We're all coming out of here with great big ideas, how we're going to use Telium to conquer the universe. But I want you to prioritize your minimal set of your most important activations. The Zion and Zion slides we saw up here a couple of presentations ago, great example of how to build out a use case. They had what are your inputs, what are your outputs, and what does it actually look like? What's the mechanism in the middle? My example is a little bit more simple. Just, okay, I'm sending an email. That's great. What's on the email? Am I going to put the customer's first name? Hey, Brian, good to see that you came and visited our website. You didn't finish filling out your form. Please come back and finish it so we can build you a loan. Am I putting an address on there? Any other customer information? The product info, what products they were looking at. Like, hey, I saw you were looking at, what was I doing? Closets. Would you like to come know more about how to finish out the closet process? We had this conversation about what our process looks like for building a customer's closet. Let's revisit that in some of the emails. So they have the details. So when that caller comes back and says, this is what I was on the phone and this is what I talked about, she's got an easy reference right in there. If this is the conversation that was had, these are the data points that we covered. And you remember I said she was going to go talk to her husband, schedule out an appointment in the future? Well, now she's got a talking sheet to go have that conversation with. But all of that needs to be identified up front, because all of those are going to be another data source that needs to be pumped into that email, be made part of that visitor data so you can get it into your audience and into your activation. So you can have activations. When do we send that email? These are all details that I want to see coming into the conversation, because it's going to drive how I'm going to build out my architecture going forward. How am I going to build my squiggly lines of arrows and boxes that we all get paid so much to do? Once you got to that point, you're ready to set up a common language. At this point in your conversation, you've already had a set of terms going back and forth. And that's just a language is just a contract between two parties. If this is how we're going to communicate. And all I can say is once your team adopts a definition, stick with it and try to stick with that term as much as possible. This is not a chance to use your thesaurus to go and talk with your engineering team. It gets very confusing, particularly in the early stages of design. Be aware that your engineering team does like to name things. Let them do it. They like naming things a little bit. It makes us feel important. A common joke that runs around in engineering, there's only two difficult things in engineering: naming things, cache invalidation, and off by 1 errors. It's the nerdiest joke I'm going to tell this whole presentation. So we've been through, this is the vision, how to build a discrete vision, how to make your pitch downwards, how to have big ideas and small targets, and a common language. So from there, we're ready to get into the nerdy stuff. So we went through and we tried to follow some of the principles that I've detailed inside this presentation here today. We went through and we built our vision. Heather and Rebecca brought that down to us, and they actually did that pretty good right up front of establishing those discrete points up front. And we identified our 6 most valuable use cases. When people come and apply for an application and they don't finish the process, when they're getting ready to pay off a loan, when there's a credit signal out there, if someone's getting ready to, they're pulling their credit, looks like they might be applying for a loan in the near future. When we've seen whether sponsoring a home sales signal, whether we've had a phone call that either failed to transfer to one of our loan officers, or we got a bad phone number in, or we have, this was referenced during one of our presentations yesterday. So we have an outwards-facing set of tools where you can come and start to experience the value proposition of PennyMac without ever needing to give us an email. Whose conversation? Was that Wags? Mike Anderson, guy that looks like Wags from Billions. And he kept saying, don't talk to me until you give me my email, whatever presentation that was. So we have an outward-facing set of tools where we have a home value estimator and a mortgage rate calculator and all these things that are external to our website that you can get to without even needing to give an email. And so we can pull signals from those. And so these are the 6 use cases we wanted to start with. But let's start with the first one, because in any project, and particularly one with integration like this one, the bulk of the work is always in the first one. So remember this? We get rid of that, and now we're going to talk about this. This is as basic as Telium gets. I've got my website. Yes, I got a whole website expressed in one box up there. And then I have Google Tag Manager that is sending me forth an ID and a bunch of signals that are coming in through Google Tag Manager with my different Telium events. I'm putting those in through Telium, and I'm choosing an activation with Salesforce Marketing Cloud and moving things out to Snowflake. We actually just finished implementing that new Snowflake connector, that new Snowflake streaming connector that was just talked about yesterday. But that is incomplete because we also have a set of identity data that I referenced earlier that we needed to get in there. But we had a challenge to cover there, is that the authorization database that handles all of our logins and emails and all that does not have the master data identity in it. And so I had a problem there of trying to crosswalk my visitor IDs and get this working. So next step is I needed something to move my data from my authorization database into our RealTO mastered identity system. And for that, that's where our AWS tooling started to come in. We used AWS Glue, which if anybody's not using it yet, it's a very expansive tool. We were relying on it primarily for its orchestration capabilities, for its data orchestration. But it does a lot of things right out of the box. So this was a zero-code approach to the solution, which when we first approached our engineering teams here, they were doing things very bespoke, everything very Python, very Lambda, building everything very much from scratch. And so first was we had to convert them over to like, all right, we're going to build this using out-of-the-box tools. We're getting close to that slide. We're not there yet, but we're almost there. Then we had a challenge of once we had a third-party system, unlike with Glue, which handles deltas in there quite well, just pulling out, just give me the new events, just give me everything that's occurred since the last time I pulled this data. Third-party systems don't necessarily interact with this very well. And so we had to build, this is one place we actually did have to build some bespoke technology on top of this, is listening to the activity log API that's built on top of RealTO to pull out what's my activity that's happened since last time, and then also filter it. Because I don't care about everything that's happening in there. Any kind of identity system is going to get a lot of noise inside it. New crosswalk data has been inserted. I've had duplicative data put in there. And as much as Telium would love for me to overflood my events and blow my event limit and have to come back to them and up my contract over and over, my finance team would not like that. So I need to prepare for that data, for that eventuality as well. But now I've got my visitor IDs ready for stitching inside Telium. I now have a combination of MDM ID and my IDS ID. So I got my mastered identity and my website identity. And then from there, we used a different AWS tool. We're using AWS Amazon AppFlow. AppFlow is not meant primarily for accessing databases, which is why we moved away from using that for our database, but it is very good at handling interactions between third-party services. It handles a very similar job of handling data orchestration, handling data mapping, things like that, and handling scheduling. But it is primarily meant for working between third-party services, and I think a lot of that feature set is going to be available in Glue in the future. And then I had one more data source that I needed to pop in there from my previous use case, and that is our campaign eligibility. I imagine a lot of you have a lot of information about this, or a similar use case of certain users are only eligible for certain campaigns, and you have established legacy marketing intelligence that needs to be applied into your data. Use the same pattern. AWS Glue to move it out of the database, drop it in S3 bucket. From there, Amazon AppFlow picks up your incremental data and moves it over into Telium via their Events API. Use the HTTP advanced one, which allows you to have embedded JSON instead of just flat JSON. That's the only difference. This is your time to take the picture. You okay? Okay, cool. The real strength of doing this, and then we separated this out from all our other use cases, and then I have a diagram back in my work at home. It's just use case, use case, use case, and each one is just mostly a repetition of this. So my next use case Just looks like that. The same thing that I had before. I'm going to go back. I'm going to try the back button here, guys. Let's see how it works. All right. We do have the technology. We just swapped out the website, added in a mobile application, and a Google Ads on the other end. Everything else is reusable. The components are already there, and this is where things start to get cool. Because then my next use case after that, after I got through the payoff request, is the failed call transfer data. And all I swapped out there, I didn't need the Google Ads for this one, but instead I swap in another database, and again, same stuff. AWS Glue, S3 bucket, AWS AppFlow out the other end, move it into the Events API. Now, about Amazon AppFlow, I feel like I should cover this. It does have a lot of out-of-the-box connectors. It can pull things in and out of Salesforce very easily. It does not have one for Telium. We did put that on their product backlog, Telium people back there. But you can pull things from the Amazon AppFlow marketplace, but it's currently not available. So we did have to build a custom connector for that, but it was a relatively painless process. So we're just moving data straight through it. And now open for questions. Yes, sir.
What sort of latency are you seeing for this flow?
Question is, what kind of latency am I seeing for this flow? There is some latency built in there. Fortunately, the activations I'm looking so far are email, so it's a little bit, it's time insensitive at the moment. When we do start moving towards use cases that are more time sensitive, we will have to take a look at those issues. But I mean, this is the campaign eligibility and the master data identity. That data doesn't update all that often, so it's somewhat time tolerant. If I ever get a top level input, that first pipe there that needs to move faster, then trying to use something like Glue or AppFlow would probably not be the correct tooling. You'd want to go something more like the live web feed, the live web events, or pumping in something a little faster. Good question. Anybody else? Okay. So, follow the principles I gave you today. Establish your vision. Be discreet about it. Build your pitch. Pitch it down to your engineering teams after you've got executive buy-in. Then get your big ideas and your down to small targets. Establish a common language, and then keep that common language. Good luck with your implementations.